Um, I am curious, Andrew, as we're wrapping up, if I would love for you to take us into like something really magical, something, so a moment or two from this leg, from this race that was like, whoo, hoo, hoo. I love hearing about these things.
Hmm. Well, yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know if I describe it as like the most like thrilling moment, but it definitely had its energy about it. I'd say the last 4 or 5 days approaching Vietnam, you're actually on the southern coast of China, um, and and there are fishing boats everywhere.
Mm,
And these are not like fancy fishing boats. These are like old-fashioned fish, like wooden boats, um, strapped, held together a little bit. They don't. Most of them do not have the navigation equipment on them that would have them show up on our radar system or our
mm,
navigation system. And they're laying nets across from boat to boat, or they're laying fishing pods. There's also a fair amount of junk in the water, large logs. One of the boats hit a large log, and there's a
wow.
lot of like random stuff, just like suitcase floating by, and it's a very strange environment. And there, I think somebody took a picture of it, but there was one moment where on our navigation system, there was two clipper boats, and then there was plus, I should also say plus, this is a shipping channel, so you have huge container ships going through as well.
Wow.
There had to have been 50 boats within a like 10 or 12 mile circum radius around the two clipper boats, and it was just chaos. Like they did not care that we were doing a sailing race. They had fishing nets to lay. You could not radio them. They would not respond to any radio signal.
Mm,
Um, some of them were not showing up at all on our radar system. So at night, the best you could hope for was this faint little light going across the horizon that, and then some of them were laying nets, in which case, if we got caught up in a net, that would stop us pretty much, and we would have to figure out a way to cut ourselves free from that.
did that ever
So,
happen?
not to us, but it's happened to some of the other boats.
Wow.
And so that was, I mean, we had some interactions with the boats that where we were maybe 50 meters apart from each other.
Mm,
Like you could see the lawn chair and the cooler in the back of their boat as they went by us. Um, so that whole experience was pretty unnerving, because we were constant. It was, yes, we're trying to still race, and yes, we've got other boats around us we're trying to compete against, but we're trying not to also run into a whole bunch of fishing boats and whatever else might be out there. So that's probably the moment, uh, those moments over those 3 or 4 days that come to mind. I mean, the big storm that I mentioned earlier of steering us through that was a pretty high intensity moment. But um, we had some other things happen, like we had a fuel leak that we had to deal with. We blew out one of our spinnakers and had to repair that.
mm,
But
wow.
those things just sort of happen and we deal with it. But those fishing boats you really felt out of control because you were not dealing with uh, a counterpart that was acting in a normal way. Like
Yeah.
normally, if a big cargo ship, for example, is 10 miles away, and we see that their path and our path are going to intersect and maybe be a mile apart, we'll radio them and ask them if they can adjust their course to give us a little bit of a wider berth. And probably 98 times out of 100, they'll say yes, no problem.
Mm,
Um, and in other cases, we'll have to adjust our course. But the fishing guys are not like that at all. They're
Mm.
just doing their business, don't care about us. And so that's probably the most anxious experience that we had.
Ah.
Definitely. Yeah.
What about like a joyful sort of like magical type of moment?
Um, yeah, probably most of them would have been around the wildlife, to be honest. Like
Mhm.
the race itself was up and down, lots of we've described it, lots of things going on. So, you know, but the most joyful moments probably were, yeah, the interactions with some of the pods of dolphins that came and visited us.
Mm.
And I mean, it was pretty cool coming into Vietnam. Vietnam from the ocean is stunning, like the landscape, and it was a sort of a misty day, so it sort of came out of the clouds all of a sudden, and it was sort of like land ho, finally. Um,
Wow.
that's always a joyful moment when you see the land that you're actually going to stop at. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say there's tons and tons of joyful moments. There's lots of moments of just really enjoying yourself and the experience and the interaction with the crew and how well the crew was getting along,
Yeah.
seeing people really growing and thriving.
That sense of
But
like contentment feels like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. It feels more of like gentle waves of highs and a couple of lows, but not really um,
yeah.
versus
Yeah.
any like huge joyful moments. Yeah.
Um, what was so we I feel like that you were anticipating that this was going to be different because there would be islands and there would be people. And I know we've now talked about some of the people, like, but did you ever have days where you didn't see other boats or like, was that most of the time? Like,
Yeah, once we had done the two rescues, um, we didn't see either of the boats that were around us, nor anybody ahead, probably for almost a week
mm,
until we caught up to the next boat ahead of us. Uh, so yeah, there were still long periods of not seeing sailing boats. We'd probably see some ships here and there, but it was definitely not as remote an experience as, say, the southern from Cape Town to Australia or the southern rounding of Australia was.
mm,
Saw a fair amount of land here and there. But yeah, it was a really interesting race. There was so many different components of it, both from
mm,
how it started with the cyclone and all that to, you know, getting around Papua New Guinea was different than the next phase when we're motoring and then doing the rescues. And then, it was just like different chunks, and it almost felt like three or four separate races that happened and
yeah,
all get stitched together at the end. But which made it interesting. And a lot of people from other boats have said the same thing, that it was one of the more enjoyable races for most of the people because the variety and there were boats around to race almost all the time. And like I think the finish of the top three boats might have only been 10 or 15 minutes apart. And then the next groups of boats were also very closely clumped together. So it was competitive and
mm,
lots of variety. And everybody also appreciated getting in early because it meant we get some bonus days and to relax in Vietnam.
yeah,
So I think this is the first race we've had where we finished before the scheduled finish date. So that's been nice. So yeah, I mean, all in all, it was a really positive race with
mm,
lots of different things that happened to us, but also other boats. And yeah, we got about a week, I think, until we leave for the next stop.
wow. Um, I mean, Sunday fun days, assassin boat culture, like what's been going on with what have you been getting up to on the boat?
Yeah, it's funny, we didn't do any assassin type games this time. We had a really nice Valentine's Day where so we were paired up. You remember the dating game on the TV show where they asked the partners the same questions and
Yes.
see what the other partner answered? Yeah. Yeah. And so we did that with our bunkmates. So our bunkmate was our partner, and we were asked questions to see how well we knew our bunkmate. And
And your bunkmate, just for clarification, that's the person who's in your bunk when you're on your watch, and vice
correct.
versa.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and there were all sort of questions around sort of Valentine's Day. So there were questions around like, if we were going out on a first date, what would we do? What if we were home having a Netflix and, nacho chips evening, what movie would we watch? Questions like that.
Oh,
Um, and so it was quite funny to see what level of understanding we had about those that we were sharing. The funny thing is when you share a bunk with somebody, you barely see them because you're 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 not even like they're not you're awake and going on deck already, and then they come down and go to bed. So you
yeah.
see them for like 5 minutes maybe.
Wow.
So you don't actually have a chance to get to know them that well based on being bunkmates, but it was fun. So we played that, which is sort of like a boat version of the dating game.
That
Um,
is really cool.
yeah. Um, and yeah, so we did that. Um, boy, it's all a blur by the time we get to shore, to be honest. I think there was lots of music on this race. We had a couple people that were really into music. We what else did we do?
Do Super quick, do people play instruments? Do people bring instruments on board, or is it more like playing music that everybody loves, or that dance music or something?
Yeah, yeah, just playing music off their phones.
Mm.
We have some portable speakers that we turn on. um, yeah, no instruments on this. Like, I don't know if we've had any instruments on the boat.
Hmm.
Um, so we had Valentine's Day. What else did we do? I can't remember to
It's
be
so
honest, but
interesting. Yeah. Um, well, I mean, I'm sure you're sharing stories at lunch. Like, there's
we
some of the
do
things
our
that we've heard about around the way that all the way around are probably still happening, right?
yeah. We still do. Somebody tells a story. Mike added one where somebody was asked a question of somebody. So somebody was, ask a question of Andrew, and over lunch, anybody that had a question of me could ask
Mm,
a question, right? And that could be sailing related or completely anything
yeah.
personal or whatever. So that was interesting because you get a little bit of a glimpse into what people were curious about and learning about other people. We did that. Um, yeah, I mean, we still, it's a pretty lighthearted boat, so we always there's a good energy. The we were a little. I think we probably toned back some of that stuff because it was really really hot during a good portion of the leg, so we were not wanting to just hang out on deck for hours on end doing activities.
Mm.
People
Without
were
any shade.
without any shade. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, um,
Ooh.
but also the energy was pretty good already. And so it kind of felt like sometimes it felt like we don't need to really do extra on this.
Yeah, no, it's just good. This feels like the sort of, and I'm a Jimmy Buffett fan, and he passed recently, so like, but this feels like a little bit of a Jimmy Buffett salute, right? Like you're hanging out together now instead of, I don't know,
That's
not so
right.
much planned activities as just like we are together and it's great.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely didn't feel like we needed to manufacture um fun in terms of having a fun day. Like it was there already and it was positive and it was a good vibe.
Yeah.
Um, so that's exciting. Yeah, I think that's the mix of people was really good, and the way people took responsibility for their own emotional state was really good. And so there was less drama, there was less Yeah, it was a smoother leg, I'd say, in general for the team than some of the other legs have been.
Mm, mm. Um, where are you headed next?
Well, yeah, this gets to be an interesting part. So we have next Friday, I think it is, we leave for Zhuhai, China, which is just on the other side of Hong Kong from where we are. So from Vietnam to Zhuhai is only, I think, about a 5 to 6 day race. So a
Hmm.
nice short one.
Hmm.
And then we stay there for a short break, maybe 5 or 6 days, I think. And then another sort of shortish leg of 10 or 12 days up further up the Chinese coast to Qingdao, which is just south of Beijing. Um, and um, so that's the next basically month. So from the early March to the end of March
Hmm.
is China. So that'll be interesting. Now Qingdao is quite far north. This week they've had snow. It's below
Wow.
zero at night in Celsius terms.
Hmm.
Um, and so that'll start presenting some new challenges on the boat in terms of sailing in that kind of climate. And then, after a short stop there, another 5 or 6 day stop there, we have a big leg across the Pacific, which will be 3 weeks to 3.5 weeks, depending on the weather.
Wow.
And North Pacific. So it'll be a real challenge. It'll be a real challenge weather-wise, but also like temperature-wise, but also typically some pretty stormy conditions up there. And but Seattle's on the other end of that. And I don't know, for me, there's something about the idea of arriving in North America that's going to feel um, like a big accomplishment to have made it back to North America.
Yeah.
Even though we have to circle North America and then go across the Atlantic to finish this thing.
Back to England.
Uh, yeah. That almost seems inconsequential in the sense of what we will have accomplished to get to Seattle.
Yeah.
So, and then I have lots of family, friends, coaching friends, high school friends from when I lived in Vancouver and in Victoria that I might have a chance to see. So I think getting to Seattle right now and just knowing that that's going to be a really challenging leg.
Mm,
I think the next two legs are going to be part of sort of preparation for that, and there'll be good tune-ups and make sure the boat's in good shape, keep my body in good shape. But that crossing from Qingdao to Seattle, 3.5 weeks, will be a proper test, and I'm excited about it because I'm excited about, once we're there, that means we are getting close to home, right?
woo.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not in a hurry to get home yet, but there's something about knowing that we've gone all the way around to the west coast of North America that's going to feel pretty good.
Yeah. I was thinking about how you've now gone more than halfway. Like
Yes,
that in itself is like, wow, that was fast, feels like.
it it was fast, and it's always that sort of relationship with time is a fascinating thing when you're doing something like this because like I said earlier, there's days that go by so fast, and then as soon as you start thinking about time or things relative to time, you slow time down, and it seems, and so I'm trying not to play that game with the rest of the race.
Mm,
I know that it'll be fun to have a quick race up to Zhuhai and then another fairly quick race up to Qingdao, but there'll be things that happen. There'll be challenges. There'll be weather. There'll be all the normal stuff that still happens.
mm,
Um, but yeah, once we get on the big leg across the Pacific, just enjoying that 3.5 weeks, and
mm.
that's the leg where you're like I don't know, 1,500 miles north of Hawaii. So
Wow.
there's large parts of that race where they talk about the closest people are in this in the space station. Uh,
What?
because yeah, because there's no islands, there's no inhabited places. Uh, if you look, you're going basically a curve, under the Siberian coast, across the opening between Siberia and Alaska, and then coming down uh, to Seattle at the very end. There's nothing out there.
Is
So
it is it is it like when you're in an airplane and sometimes an airplane will sort of go what feels like wildly north and the reason for it is because it gets you there sort of faster. There's something about the curvature of the earth. Is it that or is it that like the race people are like, well, let's really throw something at them.
no, no, it's the first one. Yeah, the world is not as described or as it appeared on a flat map on the wall of our school classrooms.
Mm,
It is the globe, and the fastest route between many places on the earth are way more curved than they would have appeared on a flat map on a wall. So
mm,
yeah, now the
wow.
fastest route from China to Seattle is quite far north,
Mm,
and yeah, it's which means it's still that'll be April,
yeah.
so you're still dealing with end of winter, early spring conditions, and so yeah, I'm sure it'll be, being Canadian will be helpful. um, but it won't stop you from getting cold, or especially when you're wet and cold, from getting a little miserable about, those conditions. So that'll be interesting to see how all of that plays into the morale and the way the team operates, because
Yeah.
there will be some people who are experiencing weather that they will not have had any experience with. We have a
Mm,
Brazilian guy joining us for that leg, who, this will be a very different
interesting.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Again and again in this conversation, I keep coming back to this idea of like experiential, not just learning, like not experiential for the sake of learning, but like I keep being reminded of like when our kids were little, or if you're ever around young children and they'll walk outside on a day where it's frosted and they'll just be like, oh, they don't have any there's no preconceived notion about like what we might sort of expect or think about it. There's not a lot of head intellect
mhm.
like with littles. And so what you get is this pure experience like we are in this now. And I again and again today I feel like I keep returning to that idea of like, yeah, sure there's instruments and sure there's plans and stuff like that. And then there's also what this is. Like and enjoying that. Feels like there's a genuine sort of enjoyment of it.
I think it's the best approach, because it's never, you could not imagine it correctly in your mind ahead of time,
Yeah.
right? And I think you set yourself up actually for more suffering if you try to imagine it to be something, and then, and
Yeah.
if you're counting on it being that, and this leg across the Pacific will definitely be a test of that, is you're going to have to wake up and go on deck in conditions that are not comfortable,
Mm,
and but it's what's your mindset going to be about that determines how you enjoy or don't enjoy that, right?
yeah.
And you're going to have to do it for 3.5 weeks straight, and so it's your mindset towards just dealing with the experience that's presented in front of you, and I'd say also really appreciating the moments that when you get a break from it,
Mhm.
because yeah, every once in a while we'll have like a couple of days where the sun will shine and clouds will part. And I lived in Vancouver, where in the winter, if you had one day of sun in 2 or 3 weeks, it was glorious, right? Because
Yeah.
uh and like the city would come alive. But you know then it was a question of, are you going to sit inside your apartment for the other 3 weeks waiting for that sunny day, or are you going to put your raincoat on and go for a walk?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's going to be like that. Everybody hopefully is going to be well equipped in terms of clothing and gear. So then it's a question of, all right, you get yourself dressed, you get it out there, and it's just like any other day, and you deal with whatever's presented. So
Mm. Amazing.
yeah, yeah, it should be fun. So I would expect, just not knowing what the communication abilities are going to be in China, I think it's probably the safest bet right now is that we'll probably chat again in Seattle
Mm.
or from Seattle. Um, and if something changes, then I can do a check-in from Qingdao before we leave. We'll definitely do that. But you know, we've heard that it's challenging sometimes to use all your communication tools right now in China, so we're not going to count on that.
Quite a few of them you literally can't. They're not
Right.
allowed. They don't work.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
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 So well, I mean, it would be gravy if that could happen. In the meantime, I know I am going to be cheering for you and checking the race viewer and just enjoying thinking about what's going on out there on the boat. Like, and
Yeah.
it's exciting. So thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you.
should be interesting. Well, thank you. No, it's great to be able to share, and the great questions. It's I said to you before we started recording, like I'm I'm really inspired to see the curiosity that has been generated. So I'm happy to sit and talk and answer these questions, and it's great reflection for me too on the experience that I'm having, because it's not something I sit and think about all the time. Um, and but it's good to sort of ground myself in, oh yeah, like I could see the change that's happened to me, and I could see the moments that were challenging, and I can see how I'm becoming a better person because of this. And I don't spend a lot of time thinking that way on the boat.
Mm.
So it's helpful to have these moments to really reflect.
Our friend Patricia um, has a really fun way of thinking about time, and I right now I'm just envisioning these like conversations as these points in time, but they're sort of layered, and then off you go, and you come back around, and there's another one, and
Hmm.
it's a fun way to think about. I don't know, like I feel like we are being so drawn into your journey and to discover that it is also a fun way for you to reflect and
Hmm.
pause. It feels really, really very symbiotic, I think. It's cool.
Cool. That's good to know.
Amazing. Well, uh, anything you want to add before we wrap up?
Um, no, other than, yeah, if for anybody that hears this, if like all the information's on my coaching website, coachandrewmoss.com. And yeah, we have we have a fundraiser for UNICEF that's part of our effort as a boat. We have a GoFundMe page that helps pay for hotel rooms and crap that I wasn't planning for before this whole thing started. Um, and so that's always appreciated. And yeah, I mean, honestly, the amount of support has been overwhelming, and greatly appreciated. And I'm glad it's sparking some interest in other people as it relates to their own lives, not so they'll go sail around the world, but so they can navigate whatever's going on in their own lives a little bit easier. So
Yeah,
um,
yeah. It's such fun to see the reflections, the different
yeah.
ways that this reflects. And they're speaking of the UNICEF fundraiser. Well, first of all, this was the conversation where I discovered that sometimes you choose to sleep on the boat. And I did not know that. So I'm sure, it adds another layer to the great appreciation that you would have for someone who, was inspired by what you're doing to donate to your GoFundMe as, your coach on sabbatical and doing something really interesting. So anyone who wants to jump in on that and support you, um, and I'm one of them, so you're joining me in
Mhm.
supporting you, which is kind of fun. And then the other thing is, um, the UNICEF fundraiser for your boat. exceeded its goal for the entire
Mhm.
race, this leg,
That's
right?
correct. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for the entire race, we have now surpassed the goal that had been set by Clipper,
Yeah.
which is exciting. It's still a competition between each of the boats to see which boat can raise the most money. And then one of the things that I signed up for is we're doing a cancer fundraiser, whereby um, people will be able to donate a certain amount of money for every inch of hair cut when we get to Scotland, because and that hair will be donated to cancer organization.
Wow.
And so we're going to raise money for cancer and donate hair. Um, and so I committed to not cutting my hair, which it's starting to grow. I'm not sure if there's going to be enough there for to donate for cancer, but the goal is to have, I think it has to be 5 inches or 6 inches of hair.
I wonder
Um,
if it will be. This is really cool.
so I'm going to be pretty hairy by the time, not this hair will go, but the, the hair on my head, yes, will get longer and longer as we go, and hopefully there'll be enough for a nice cut in Oban, and then so there'll
That
be
is awesome.
some kind of fundraiser there as well. But
Yeah, yeah.
yes,
Very cool.
yes, anything people can do to help on those on it in any of those ways is greatly appreciated. And yes, it does help. Staying on the boat for an introvert, it's nice because everybody else got off the boat, so I have the whole boat to myself.
Yeah.
But it's not the most comfortable. The cooking facilities and all that are pretty suspect, and so having a hotel room for a couple days is a nice treat. But
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't part of the budget. Um, so any help would be great on that. But yeah, I honestly I get as much, all of the feedback and all of the comments and all of the stuff on social media. It's still amazing to me that people are paying attention as they are, and keeping up to date on what we're doing. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's other ways to support besides
Yeah,
uh besides like cash monies, and I see you enjoying the support of all those folks who, yeah, and
absolutely.
great questions. Keep them coming, people.
Keep
This
them
is we got a
definitely keep
couple.
them
We may
coming.
have a couple of months now to bring up some, because if we don't end up checking in Scotland,
Yeah.
China. So cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, um, thank you for this. What another great conversation. Super safe travels. I cannot. I'm so excited for you and what's to come. And yeah,
Thanks, Kay. And thanks for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
you're welcome. We'll see you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Thank you for listening. Where in the World is Andrew Moss is produced by me, Kay Locke Culp. If, like me, you're inspired by Andrew's journey, you can follow along in his Facebook group, Climb Aboard Andrew's Adventure. The link is in the show notes. Also, this is the longest time that Andrew has been away from his family and his work. He truly has no idea what lies on the other side of this adventure. You can contribute to Andrew's adventure costs and help soften the blow of a year away from his beloved coaching practice by donating to his GoFundMe at the link in the show notes. And Andrew asks that you consider making a donation to his boat's UNICEF fundraiser, also at the link in the show notes. Thank you for listening and for supporting Andrew if you can. Join us next time when once again we answer the question, where in the world is Andrew Moss?